And if you could just briefly introduce yourself so we have it for our records and for the minutes and for the audience. Yeah.
My name is Sydney Weber. I am Director of Marketing and Communication for Ohio Health, and David Keller, who's Community Outreach Coordinator for the Southeast Ohio Food Bank. Should I have let him introduce himself?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Great. Thanks for having us here. We're here to ask for street closure for Bounty on the Bricks. It will be the 7th Bounty on the Bricks. And we're asking for a street closure from Washington to Union from around 8 until 11 in the 8 in the morning until 11 in the evening. This is actually the 7th annual Bounty on the Bricks and the 3rd that Ohio Health has helped organize. It is organized by a group of community members, some of who are here usually, and we have raised so far about $510,000, almost over $500,000 for the food bank so far through this event. Our partners, aside from the community members, are the Sisters Health Foundation and also the Osteopathic Heritage Foundation of Nelsonville, who match funds for the Southeast Ohio Food Bank. We feel like it's a really important event, not only culturally for our community, but really the money does help support the health and wellness of those who can't help for themselves. So David's going to talk a little bit about the impact of the funds from Bounty Over the Bricks in the years.
Right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the City Council for hearing our proposal to once again host Bounty on the Bricks on Court Street in downtown Athens. Since 2012, this incredible event has raised, as Sydney said, over $500,000 for hunger relief across Southeast Ohio. And I cannot thank you enough for opening up our city and our community for the benefit and support of those on the front lines of fighting hunger. Last year, our network distributed over 6 million pounds of food through 70 member agencies to our friends and neighbors across our region in Southeast Ohio, and the importance of Bounty on the Bricks for meeting this need cannot be overstated. Bounty on the Bricks 2018 was directly responsible for helping our agencies secure over $65,000 and serve people across 8 counties throughout our area. And when we talk about who this program supports, it is overwhelmingly mixed generational families. In fact, over 80% of the households we served last year had a child, a senior, or both present in the household. And when we look at Athens County specifically, we know 1 in 6 people in our county is considered food insecure. And when we look at children, that number raises to 1 in 4. What this means is that throughout our region with our network, we served an average of 13,000 households each month, every month last year. With all the uncertainty we've seen in Washington, D.C. and its impact on the resources our organization needs to promote food security and prevent chronic hunger, having steadfast allies like the City of Athens means so much to us, our network of agencies, and the people we serve. By providing a high-profile, centralized location for this event, the city is not only providing our agencies with one of the largest sources of funding that directly supports their work, but allows our community to make a clear and resounding statement about our commitment to fighting hunger in Southeast Ohio. Bounty on the Bricks helps ensure everyone, no matter what their circumstance, has access to a high-quality, nourishing food that they need for a healthy and active lifestyle. And I'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for considering our proposal. If you have any questions about how Bounty on the Bricks supports our organization or helps meet the need in Southeast Ohio, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And I neglected to turn this over to Chair of the Transportation Committee, Peter Katsas. I was on a roll tonight. So excuse me, the chair.
It's all right. You can steal the floor. And please forgive me. I don't know if you mentioned it straight up front. Sometimes it takes me a second to get into council mode, but what's the date of the event?
August 3rd.
August 3rd. Okay.
And I don't think I mentioned it, so thank you.
And and this is the since this is the season of street closure, we kind of have the general questions. Nothing's really changing from prior years. This is the same closure, same.
Right. So the sidewalks will still be open all day. So we'll take them off, and people can walk in while we're setting up and cross the street and stuff. So it's just for traffic until the event actually happens, and then then we'll close the street off where the tables are.
And Ms. Weber, we had just a quick conversation before we started. You were also mentioning kind of the atmosphere of the the street on that day. If you would like to just kind of talk about the vendor, not the businesses and other people that are interacting with the street during the day.
Yeah, I think there's always concern that people will be angry that the street is closed, or some of the retailers might be upset. But actually, it's really a collegial experience. People are coming out, asking what we're doing. All our volunteers are really engaged and informed about what we're doing. So it's actually a lovely day, and I don't think we've encountered anybody that's upset that they can't drive, because certainly they can walk or bike.
Okay. Does anybody else on the? Oh, we do. Okay, Member McGee.
First, I'd like to say I applaud your efforts. I think it's a great endeavor what you do, and it's well worth supporting. I did have a question. I was just curious how many people actually participate as diners in the Bounty on the Bricks, and then I also wondered if you ever considered doing anything that is a little bit different, such as Wonder in the Woods or something like an indoors thing at a different time of month. Something that would bring the community together, because I think that's what you really do. Right. You really bring us together, and anything that can do that, sitting down at the table with strangers, that kind of thing, I think is commendable. So for the answer to your first question, last year we had close to 300 people. We have capacity to 4, so we always have open seats. And then, as far as thinking of other ways to do it, that's a great idea. No, we hadn't thought about it. Right now, we were focused on this, but we'll consider that. Great.
Thank you.
Member Crowell.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo Member McGee's comments. Thank you so much for doing this. What a wonderful fundraiser. I didn't hear the times that you were requesting. What time are you requesting the street to be closed? And
this might be, the city might have to answer, but technically we'll be starting to set up at 8, and then would need to shut down at 9 or 11. I'm sorry. And so I think it needs to close a little bit earlier, and you may know, like.
So it's all day,
a little bit earlier,
much.
exactly. So it's all day. Okay. Yeah.
All right. And let me also echo everybody else here. I would like to thank both of your agencies, Ohio Health and also HABCAP, for participating in this and taking the baton from the Athens County Foundation and running with it. I think it's just another thing that makes Athens what Athens truly is. So I have.
Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have some comment? You do. Well, actually, one last thing. Okay. We forgot to mention if you could please sign in at the dais there, so that we have your name correct in the minutes. Mayor Patterson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's your committee.
Yeah.
I believe last year we closed the street down at 6 a.m. It was either 6 or 8, but it's
what the ordinance says.
That it would be closed at 2 in the afternoon. Well, for setup, I think it's going to need to be
I think
sooner than that.
for cars, it's closed.
No, it says 8 a.m. To midnight.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what we can do is we can certainly have informational bags on the meters to remind people the evening before, the next morning, that will be closed down. I too want to chime in on how important this is. Bounty on the Bricks, again, being its 7th year, the first 4 years, it was the Athens County Foundation that really pushed this forward. And I was so pleased when Mark Seckinger, president of Wilderness Hospital, Ohio Health, decided to take up that mantle, and Sydney, you were a big part of that as well, to continue on. I can't think of a more critical time in history when it comes to food insecurity than now, with what we've seen, the impact of the government shutdown on things like the SNAP disbursement and whatnot. And so to continue this on and having raised, $500,000 is amazing, quite honestly. And so, again, I thank you for continuing this moving forward. I want to mention something to Member McGee, because I was sitting with President Mark Seckinger and brainstorming other places that we could do something like this, and know that things have been kicked around. One potential idea for a smaller event some other time of the year would be, we called it Bounty on the Bridge, with the new bike path spur bridge, or the Columbus Road bike path. being close to AceNet and one of our other microbreweries in town, and having tables set up on the bridge with lights swagged over the bridge itself, and who knows? But I think you're spot on with thinking, how else can we do this for community engagement? Maybe having something at Highland Park or something like that. Who knows? We're always kicking ideas around, right?
Right.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Going down the bullet points. Right now there's snow on the ground. You wait 15 minutes. There's not snow on the ground, but the director of Public Works is here tonight, and he's already thinking about when the weather is going to change and the construction projects will start to happen. So tonight, Public Works Director Bob Hetty is here to discuss the Richland Avenue pedestrian passageway.
Thank you, Chairman. As Peter mentioned, Richland Avenue passageway is something I think we've been working on probably since 2010. We have 5,000 pedestrians on the peak hour cross between West Green and the Baker Center, Aquatic Center area, and about 8,000 or 9,000 vehicles that go up Richland Avenue every day. The project is very close to being ready to be built. It was advertised in November, and unfortunately got one bid back. And the constraint was that we had just not enough time to build it. In 90 days, it was an original bid. We had one bid that came in almost 150% of the estimate. As many are aware, we can't award for more than 110%. Talked with that bidder and some others and reworked it and added several days. So it went from 90-day window to 147-day window, and re-advertised it on January 10th. And here, as we were getting ready to open, they came back and said, well, we'd like the more time. We also, it looks like you need more money as well. So you should have a form in front of you there that shows some of the numbers. So the first advertisement, the estimate was $2,599,814.74. We've since revised that estimate to $2,999,994.46, so almost $3 million. And a lot of that cost comes from that shortened construction window. Several of the bidders are talking about 6-day work weeks and double shifts on some of those days. So the bid opening date is February 21st. And why I'm here to talk to you tonight is currently we're very close to having enough money, but what's been appropriated in the past won't get us quite to the new estimate, especially if it goes over 110% of the estimate. So for this project, we were able to receive almost 50% of grant funding. So $1,812,195 is Transportation Alternatives Program funding from ODOT. Our partner, Ohio University, is offered to kick in $400,000, so that's about 11% of the total. And the construction costs, we're looking at actually the construction, a little bit of contingency, and then construction engineering. So that would be the top of your top of that form there that I've given to the chairman. And we have a little bit of stormwater funds in there as well. So tonight we're sitting about 12% short of the total that we think to deliver that project. There's some contingency built in there, and that is since this project is kind of unique, it's so unique that I think that's why we're seeing some of the differences in pricing. This goes through ODOT's process. They have an estimating program that they have a whole room full of people that sit, and after our consultant looks at it, they also send it through ODOT. The other thing we're seeing is market forces. Talking with USAID Rural Development, they've had more than half of their projects rebid this year. I think that with the economy being spurred up a little bit, we're seeing a lot of development, and that's driving up construction costs. Several bidders won't bid because they have other work already lined up. So I think it's a function of its location. It's a little bit more challenging because we're here on campus, and as well as it's just market forces that we're seeing. So what we would ask tonight is for council to consider raising that appropriation somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. We'll have the bid opening on the 21st, and we should have an answer from Ohio University whether they're able to contribute any more. And if we could pass that by March 4th, I think we would keep this project on schedule and be able to build it this summer. With that, if you have any questions.
And just let me just do a quick synopsis. So we're looking for an additional $500,000. The ordinance would be read twice, and the construction date finishing would be sometime late October.
September 30th.
September 30th is now the completion date instead of, well, 120. It was in August, I assume, was the...
Yeah, I believe
yeah.
for somewhere there to try to avoid impacted classes.
Okay. And engineer Hetty called me, and we did have a discussion about this. And so you were looking for the additional $500,000 to come from some of your current pots.
Correct.
Yes.
Street rehab funds have almost double that, so it may impact this year's paving a little bit. We've made a pretty good gain in our paving, so I'm not too worried about what we can do this year. If we make a little sacrifice there to see this project on through fruition.
Okay. Do we have questions? Member McGee.
Thank you, Chairman Katsas. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what the city's contribution would be. And I was looking at your sheet, and it looks to me like all of the city funding is coming from the street rehab fund. Is that correct? And the storm sewer fund, I should say?
Yes, street rehab and storm sewer are the two funds.
And on your example, where you took away the $400,000, which I take it is the OU contribution, is that to show that the city's share would then be $932,000 for the street rehab fund?
Correct.
Okay, and then we also had the $90,000. So the city's fund is basically, contribution is basically $1 million, and you want another $500,000 from the city, is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay, and you anticipate the university may offer to contribute to that, but we don't know if that's the case, is that correct?
They're reviewing that now, and
okay.
We should have an answer before you would have your final vote.
Okay, and one last question was simply if the timeline was changed so that they weren't in such a rush, since they're basically increasing everything by about $400,000 for getting it done shorter with 6 days a week and the extra shifts and everything. If the timeline was not changed and things were able to be started sooner, even next year or anything like that, would that save the city any money?
From our indication with the Department of Transportation, the 1.8 million, 1.812 million is not guaranteed. So,
okay.
There's a possibility to be there, but as the state tightens their belt, the district could not commit to having that funds in the September 30th actually is our delivery date. So we went as long as we could with the construction date.
If I could ask one last question, do you know what the anticipated impact is on that area of Richland Avenue and I suppose that part of Court Street? Are there going to be street closures at all during that time period that you anticipate?
Richland will be closed from West Green Drive to Bobcat Lane for 135 days. So May 6th to September 18th, I believe, is the date. This project would, as scheduled, impact 2 football games. We've met with the university about how they would handle that. Bobcat Lane is to remain open as part of the project.
Where does the traffic go that's coming down from the town down on Richland? Where would that be directed?
It would, I believe the detour now is currently out Union and back to Schaefer.
Schaefer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Schaefer in both directions, pretty much.
Thank you.
You know, let me add too, I mean, the one thing that really has been difficult for engineering and public works for a lot of these projects, to include 1804 Way and the Stimson Avenue Roundabout, and even the Oxbow Bridge project that took place with the Oxbow Bridge rehab, is that tight time frame. And you're seeing a lot of contractors just looking at it going, we have no guarantee that we can be able to squeeze a project into breaking ground right after graduation and trying to get things wrapped up before the students come back in for move-in. And so I have to give a big thank you to Ohio University for saying, yep, we can extend that into the fall semester to get this done. You can't roll it forward, or you can't move it further forward because of graduation.
Sure.
But certainly do it on the other end. And so we think this is really going to be helpful for this bid opening by loosening this up. But, we've had this discussion ad nauseum, and it has to do with, this being a deconflicting feature on Richland Avenue, much needed. And once it's done, it's done.
Great. Member Crow.
There are disincentives built in here too. It's another term you hear us use is liquidated damages. ODOT's terminology is disincentive. So there's $6,000 in there if they miss the date and get the passageway open in 95 days. There's $1,000 if they don't get Richland Avenue opened in 135 days, and there's another $6,000 at the 147-day mark. So that, and that's what you can use as leverage to try to encourage it. On the first time it was bid, they built those into their price. So they basically admitted they couldn't do it in 90 days and just built the disincentives into their price. So that should reduce the amount.
I can see that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hetty, I just want to make sure I understand this. We determined that 90 days is not going to be possible, right? And so not only have we gone to 147 days, but we're also increasing the amount of money, because even in that 147 days, they're going to work 6 days a week and overtime. So I mean, if they didn't have those overtime costs, then we're talking about 180 days or something, or an even longer period of time?
Well, it depends which contractor, which bidder you ask. One hasn't said anything about the time, and the other one who originally bid it and wanted more time still wants another 30 days. So we'd have to get ODOT to go to the district to go to central office and request that we extend that September 30th date. Those federal funds we've committed to delivering the project by that time. So that could likely happen. But I don't know if another 30 days is going to bring the price down enough, notable amount.
Right.
So.
And then my other question is, and I'm sure you've thought about this, or the university has, the pedestrian traffic going from West Green. Is there going to be a way for them to get through, or they just go further down south on Richland Avenue and cross in front of the convo or something like that? Or?
During the summer, there is a ADA approved route for pedestrians. The 95 days to open the passageway, it's in there now, is so that they're open for classes.
Oh, so the passageway will be open.
That's the intent.
I see.
Is that
and they'll still be working on it.
We don't believe we can direct pedestrians where they should be going, even with fencing.
Right. I think you're probably right about that. Yeah.
That's why the 3 steps. That's why it went from 90 for everything to 3.
I see. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, please.
Just one other question. Athens seems to have a tendency to have multiple projects going on at the same time, sometimes confusing everyone, especially visitors, when the exits are closed off and no one knows how to get in or out. But my question was on Stimson Avenue. How much of Stimson Avenue is supposed to be being worked on at the same time as this? Any of it at all?
Yeah, construction won't start on Stimson until after this one's complete. So
okay.
We're looking at 2020 construction for Stimson. So.
Okay.
But if I may, as a reminder, because we have talked about this before, is again, if successful with this bid opening, there is the other project on Richland Avenue, which is the bridge across from Stop and Cop. So that's this summer as well.
Or Coates Run.
We'll just be putting detour signs up everywhere, much like we did with the East State Street improvement this past summer, which is another one that we have to wrap up too, but that'll be wrapped up in the spring.
Okay. Yes, please.
Sorry, just to make it clear though, I believe the Coates Run bridge replacement is not closing the whole road, right? One lane at a time?
That's correct.
That's what I thought.
It'll be signalized.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Do we have additional questions from the audience? Oh, yes, please.
I do have just a question about the repaving, because I know we go on an annual transportation tour. There's a ranking system that you use to help set the priorities on that. And I do know that for the past several years, or at least last year, I think we had bumped up the amount spent on paving and repairs. So is there I know there's always a long list, and we say we'll get to it if we can. So are there some projects that have been carried over from the last year from paving repairs, and is there a list out there, I guess, my plan, or developing a plan so that if you have up to $400,000 or $500,000 less, how we'll cope with that in terms of streets?
And I can't speak for, I know last year I managed a plan that was in development when I came to the city, and we had an OPWC fund, so I believe we spent another $400,000 or $500,000 that we typically don't spend out of our own funds to do that. We paved, I think, almost 18 miles of street last year, which before was in the 7 or 8 mile range, 9 miles. So we took a pretty good bite last year out of the list of streets, and we haven't developed the list yet for this year, but there's none that I'm aware of. Hooper is one that I know definitely needs some attention. The bridges there that we share responsibility with ODOT. But I don't think we have any of the caliber that we had at East State Street or some of those others. So I think we could sacrifice and do a little bit less. There's some other rehab alternatives out there. I think we can do to save a little bit of money and not actually do overlays, but actually extend the life of some of our streets with some sealants that we can go over top of and seal the streets up. So I don't see it as being a real step backwards. It'll just be a little bit lighter paving program than what we've seen, and which would be expected since we don't have grant funding in it as well.
Okay,
The
thank you.
director and I have had several conversations on that topic, President Isley, about what we would do this summer with the new street repaving. Again, to kind of reiterate, in 2016, we repaved close to 9 miles of street. 2017 was another 9 miles. 2018 was 18 miles of street. Prior to that, we were typically doing 4.5 to 5 miles of street annually. So we've really bumped up the street repaving, and the conversation we had just this morning is, are there really any streets that are at the 3 level? And need to go back and look, but I don't think so. I think most are at 4s or above. If you remember the metric that's used, 9 being a perfect brand new street, i.e. 1804 way, a 1 being a goat path. And I don't think we have many goat paths in the city of Athens, but I think that Engineering and Public Works has done a fantastic job of getting a lot of miles done. And so for a project like this, I think to safely kind of redirect to get the Simpson Avenue or the Richland Avenue pedestrian passageway completed.
Great.
It's doable.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. And I never want to try to close out with the last question, but I just want to touch on East State Street. This does not impact the additional paving that needs to be finished up, that we just kind of ran out of time with. I guess underneath the US 33 bridges.
We ran out of warm weather, basically.
Yes.
The asphalt that needs to go out underneath the overpass has to have 50-degree surface temperature. So when we got into November last year, we just ran out of the warm months. So the contractor is supposed to come back, and within 30 days, once he starts, he has 30 days to finish, no later than June 1st. So we expect him back before then, but it won't impact the funding for it. That's a whole separate.
Okay, great. All right. Oh, we do have a question from the audience. Please, if you could. Yep, please. Yep. And just sign in and also tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Parker Smith. I live at 85 West State Street. I'm also a representative for the off-campus students and Student Senate at Ohio University. I just had a question about the funding contribution from the university. I'm curious if there's a specific formula for how much is asked of them on public works projects that kind of work on some, university-related property, or if the 400 was $7,000 was a number they kind of just threw out there, or if that's what you asked of them, or something like that?
I'll speak on it briefly because I wasn't here when those conversations were held. I believe it was done based on the portion of the project attributable to its location and any of the things that OU would like to see. There's quite a bit of, because of the location here, there's some brickwork, there's some landscaping, there's some things that you wouldn't see out on a 4-lane highway, but this isn't being built out on 33 or 50. Now the mayor may be able to speak to some of those conversations, but they have agreed to come back and look and see, since we've had cost increases based on like market forces and schedule, whether there's something else they can contribute to help bring this project over the finish line.
The only thing I can really add to that is some of this, to a degree, is the land use. There is OU property to where there's going to be a bus pull-in that is right there by Grover Center. So it will be going into university's properties, and that's part of the project as a whole, which is going to be a great addition, plus a way to kind of help channelize pedestrians that are using the bus to get off and use the pedestrian passageway, kind of forcing them to use the pedestrian passageway to go through, and then also the west side of the passageway, right there on West Green, where there's a lot of work that's going to have to take place to make that ADA approachable. So there's land use that goes along with it, and whatever the value of that is, if you want to think of it that way.
And the university did contribute property to the project, so they granted these permanent easements and to be able to build the project, as well as temporary easements for construction.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so now we are moving down to towing and storage fees for vehicles. And just a little history. This, I believe, went back to September, where we got a notification from a business owner that's in the towing industry that he was being sued because he was charging more than what Athens City Code was able to be charged for towing vehicles. And so I pulled up the Athens ordinance, which is 70617. And within that code, it says, within the corporation limits of Athens, the towing charge shall be no more than $45 to be raised to $50 effective January 1st, 2002. I don't know what you were paying for stuff back in 2002, but I would say that everything has gone up. So what I proposed to do back then was to raise it to be in line with the what's currently listed with the Ohio Revised Code, which is for vehicles with a gross vehicle weight of less than 10,000 pounds. 10,001 pounds to be specific. The maximum towing and storage fees are $129.17 per day. If you have a vehicle that is more than 10,001 pounds, expect to pay at the most $216 or $29 per day for towing and storage. So what I'm asking for this evening is to update our code so that our fees are in line with what the maximum fees are for Ohio Revised Code at this point. I feel that at this point, since I have a business owner that is pointing to the code and saying that he can't do business with the prices that are being listed in our code, that's a soft spot for me. So I'm always willing to listen to businesses and what they are encountering, and so I would love to entertain this in an ordinance moving forward. Member McGee.
Thank you, Chairman Kotsis. My understanding, and this might be of interest to Member Fall, is that this is really, in some ways, has gone into an issue of preemption and whether the state has taken the rights of the cities to even set these fees, is my understanding. Now, I'm aware of some of the possible cases that are going to be filed or are in the process of being filed on this matter. And again, preemption seems to be the real thing. But my question is, if you're basically going to go with the route of asking the city to increase the fee to the state level, which, as you indicated, would be $129, is the city also adjusting the show-up fee? Because there's traditionally been a difference between when a tow truck driver shows up but doesn't actually do a tow and how much he can charge for such a thing. And I'm not sure whether PICO actually regulates that. And for all the students who had their cars towed for a number of reasons, I think that show-up fee should be much less than than the $129, and the city should make a special point of keeping that fee less and making sure that that is an enforceable aspect of this.
You know, and within our code, and this is once again under 7617, letter E, the towing service shall be entitled to a maximum fee of $10 to release a vehicle to the owner or his agent after the towing service posted hours of operation. So no, that's not within. Because I understand what you're saying. If a truck shows up,
right,
but doesn't hook up and drag it off, I have not seen anything within the ORC or within our code then at this point that would. Although here, maximum show-up fee.
$20.
Yeah, $20.
That's not bad.
Okay.
That's the 2002.
That's 2002, and I don't know if I don't know if our ORC has those suggestions. I have not seen anything within the Ohio Administrative Code, which is 49.2-24-03.
Right.
So, Member Crowell.
Yeah, I just want to point out that according to the code section that you provided for all of us, the removal of the motor vehicle charged by a towing service pursuant to these sections of the code shall not exceed the reasonable cost of complying with the requirements of those sections. But in no instance shall the fee exceed $129. So the reasonable cost of showing up should be obviously less than $129, right? That's what you're saying, Member McGee. Yes. It ought to be, maybe it's not 20 if we're going to think about all the fees, but it certainly should be much less than $129.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we're also not required, if I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong, to go to the maximum of the Ohio Revised Code. We don't need necessarily to have the City of Athens Code reflect the same maximum that the Ohio Revised Code, unless there is an argument that the business that contacted you needs that maximum amount in order to be a viable business.
Yeah.
That's what the possible litigation is all about. The state is setting a maximum amount, whether it's through PUCO or the ordinance itself, or I should say statute itself, but the question is the minimum amount. Okay, so we know there's a maximum amount. What the city is really, if we do less than what the state is authorizing, we're setting a minimum amount. Is that preempted, and do we have the right to do that? And I don't think anyone knows for sure yet until it goes to a court, and I'm sure that Member Fall would like to see that litigated, but I doubt if it will be on behalf of the city.
Do we have any additional questions from anyone? Yes.
I was just going to say it's certainly worth looking into any ORC language for show-up fee. If it's there, see what's out there.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, thank you guys. My name is Zach Rises. Following Parker's example, I live at 17 West Washington Street in Uptown Athens. I always find something of interest when I come to city council meetings, and I also would like to thank you all for the concern and consideration you're showing over the real specifics about how relatively minor changes to city ordinances might affect students. I just wanted to provide a personal anecdote to highlight the ways in which what's the difference between, it seems like in this case, about $60 difference, I think. Was that about right? The maximum that the city allows you to charge versus the cap that the Ohio Revised Code wants. That amount difference can make a really big difference in the life of a student or somebody who's low income, which most students are, and as we know, many of our county residents are. I think that it's just really worth highlighting that parking in this city is not easy. And I know that the city council works really hard, and the mayor's office works really hard to make parking easier and to work on issues of transportation in the city, but it's still very difficult. And I have a friend, so this is not my story, but this is a friend's story, and I watched them go through this struggle. I had a friend who had their car towed while they parked poorly and did not pay, and then the life circumstances led to their car being towed outside of their apartment. And the financial burden for them of going back to the financial burden for them was such that they had to go back to their family and say, hey, my car got towed, I really need the money. And that put their family, who lives in another part of the state, into financial stress, working to provide for them. Even those minor changes, I think, can really be an additional factor that hurts students who are working on focusing on their classwork. And by and large, while we sometimes cause some ruckus, are really committed to their studies and to doing well here in Athens. And so any efforts that can be made to keep those costs lower within the reason of allowing towing companies to remain in business and not getting into trouble with the state, I think should be made. And if the results of that are, well, we kind of posture to the state and ask whether they're really going to sue us because we're doing what's best for our citizens, that's a question for all of you to decide. But I know that the state or this city knows what's best for our low-income populace. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, we have one more, at least.
I'm Jeff Reisner, City Councilman, 2nd Ward. 2 questions. What does Ohio University do about towing? What do they charge? Do they tow? Okay. So, what does it cost me to get it back? All right. Question number 1. Number 2, if the point of your ordinance is to bring the city in line with the Ohio Revised Code, why not just repeal the ordinance that we have now? Why bother to have an ordinance at all and just simply go with the Ohio Revised Code? Just put that on the sign. Ohio Revised Code says it's $129, the end. We don't have an ordinance. We don't need one. We're going to do what the state says we should do. That's a question. Answer?
Well, I don't.
Yes? No?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a point in having an ordinance?
If I could,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I could answer that, keep in mind that the state is saying a maximum.
Okay.
Okay, and the question for the city and the council, of course, is whether we accept that as a minimum. So at some point in time, you're right, we could decide, let's just leave it whatever the state says controls, but there's that real question for some of us, as the gentleman before you indicated, perhaps that 129 is too much. And again, we have the question of what do we do for the show-up fee, because
Correct,
I'm not sure if that's...
but if the Ohio Revised Code says $129 maximum, I don't see any way that the city can get around not charging the maximum. I think that's part of the intent of the law. Wouldn't you say so, Counselor?
No.
No? don't know.
I think the state could have set a minimum or said this is the fee, but they said a maximum.
Well, let's postulate this. If we're already charging a minimum, which we are, why bother to change it? I mean, who benefits by changing it? The students, citizens? What? I mean, that's, again, question. Who would benefit by changing it from the minimum that it is now to a new minimum, which might be the maximum?
But you want, go ahead, please.
In both cases, we're talking about a maximum fee. There's no minimum in either in the ordinance in the City of Athens or in the Ohio Revised Code. We're talking about the maximum that a towing company can charge you for towing your car.
Correct.
So we may decide that that state maximum is not the maximum we want in the City of Athens. Thus, we would have our own ordinance, and this would remain in our code.
But I think I heard the member Costas propose that the fee that we would charge would be the same as the Ohio Revised Code. Was that correct? Or did I misunderstand you?
Bring it in line with.
Bring it in line with.
Yes.
Which is 129.
Well, right now we have Athens City Code within corporation limits of Athens shall be no more than $45 to be raised to $50 effective January 1st, 2002.
That was 17 years ago.
Correct.
Right.
So I feel that at this point that the Ohio Revised Code has probably done a little bit more study on this, and I feel like it's probably time
Does the city gain anything? Does any of that money go to our general fund, or does it go all to the towing company?
I don't believe we...
Do we know?
We don't know.
I think I can shed some light on that. If it were a city violation, i.e. a vehicle that was parked in front of a fire hydrant or whatever, or in a city-marked tow zone, there would likely be a citation, and whatever the cost of that, the amount of that citation is, along with the towing fee. So it would be, the city wouldn't gain anything from the towing fee because that goes to the towing company itself. The city, on the other hand, for the violation of the law, would have whatever incurred fee there is, or fine there is for that. But if it's a private property and is posted with tow zone, there's the property owner, if it's properly marked, has the authority to call a towing company and have that vehicle towed away.
Right.
As long as it's marked as to where you can find your vehicle once it's been towed away. Everything's on them. The city doesn't receive anything into the general fund for that.
No.
Okay. I just want to make that clear to the public.
Yes.
So I think this has been a good first discussion, and we probably won't settle all the questions tonight, and we do have the benefit of asking the expertise of the law director. We might also check with the Municipal League, or even just going online to check with some of the other cities. And I think it's also valuable to find out the university information for their tow fees. And then we can come back for further discussion. But I appreciate you bringing it forward. We've discussed it once a long time ago, and now it's coming to the fore again. So,
Great.
Good points.
All right. And with that, we are done with Transportation Committee.
And moving on to Committee of the Whole. So, 3 agenda items for us tonight. The first of which is the residential curbside compost program. And public and council members may remember that we did pass an ordinance earlier this year approving a pilot project, and for beginning in the summertime. And so now we're talking about, we've had some information about the results on that compost program. And I think council members Reisner and Butler, I know, have some comments to make about it.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Just to bring everybody up to date, back in July 1, 2018, a ordinance was passed that would authorized a pilot residential curbside composting project, and it was to see if such a project, wanted to see if there was a demand for such a thing to put what would become compost on the curbside, have someone pick it up, and then it would be processed. There was meetings and discussion about it. Some people said yes, it would certainly work. Other people were saying no, probably wouldn't, because a lot of people compost on their own. And it was decided the only way you're ever going to find out is actually try it and see what happens. And that's why the idea was to have a pilot project. So I think that's why we're now here. The pilot project is, oh, I'm sorry. Microphone. Thank you.
You have to start all over again.
No, we don't.
Please don't. I missed everything you said.
Smart aleck. Okay. But moving right along, we're now at the point where there should be some data to support the views one way or the other, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the administration has found out.
Well, we did receive data from Rural Action, and not Rural Action. Rural Action was involved in this process, but from AHRC in Rural Action. What we've found out is that we have diverted 22.9 tons from landfill and being used into reusable compost material. The average weight per bucket that was collected was 10 pounds, 10.39 pounds. The rate, or the set out rate by the participants, there was a lot of metrics that were put into this pilot. The set out rate was 65.98%. That is, that they set them out at the curb for the compost pickup going around every week. Some other metrics that I have for you somewhere in my pile of papers. I guess that's it for right now. There was also questions asked of people about the service and how they felt about it. And of the 100 or 260 people in the program, only 2 individuals dropped out of the program. One dropped out because they moved away. The other person or family dropped out because they didn't like composting anymore. But the remaining participants in the pilot stayed in. Everyone indicated that they liked the service, or they really liked the service, depending on the scale in which they answered it. It was, vast majority was to the positive. There were a couple negative comments in there about the program, and they were by and large, they would like to have seen the bucket washed out or returned a clean bucket to them, or the smell of the bucket, but that was basically it. We think it was successful. We do have an opportunity to extend it for another 6 months and include 40 more participating families, and we've heard of interest in, I believe, 20 plus people who would like to be part of a continuance of this program. The cost per month would actually drop down as well. The cost before was $7,600 a month. This cost would go down because of increasing the number of participants to $6,177.15. At the end of the day, with this program, and I think a large part of it being Athens Hawking Recycling, understanding how this would work and logistically making it work, that if this were after the second round or continuance of the pilot program, if it continues to be as successful as they have identified it as being with Rural Action, that this would be basically a opt-in program in the city, as opposed to launching something citywide that would require opting out if you didn't want to. So it's like I said, at this point in time, it looks like it's been successful, at least for the 258 participants who remained in the program for compost.
Yes, Councilmember McGee. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
By my calculations, it cost $45,600 for the 6 months. That's based on the $7,600 for 6 months. I just wanted to make sure we understood what the calculations are. And my understanding from the former presentation was that the expectation for the program, if adopted as a whole, is in the range of $200,000 to $300,000 a year, if I remember right.
Well, under an opt-in program, there would be a rate increase for those who opt into the program for paying this, and so we would work out those numbers. We'd have to see. It'd be slow at first. So at this point, the pilot has 260. It could go up to 300. If all 300, are, in after the second phase of piloting, if they're paying, we would figure out that metric to make it neutral.
Okay. My real question, though, is, and I've agonized over this, whether I oppose it or not, because I love composting. I do it at home, and I've indicated I've been doing it for 23 years, and you get some great soil, and it's a great thing to do. But I just wondered if there's been any distinction between the apartment complexes and the family housing in the city. I think what we're trying to do is to kind of shove a one solution down everyone's throats and saying this is the way to do it. And after reading some of the material that's been provided by Rural Action as to how different cities are doing it, I think some of the other cities are really emphasizing for the apartment complex is a whole different kind of thing, not just a pickup, but maybe a central location kind of thing, which might cut the cost and might be actually more suitable for it. For the families, I think there's more emphasis in other places on educational aspects for you can compost in your own yard. Show your kids how to do it. Don't just put it in a bucket and have it taken away like everything else in life. Show them what it does and how it breaks down, and there's earthworms and how you can do your gardening. That kind of thing I think would actually fulfill the purpose more. And would have some really positive results. So again, I'm concerned that what we've been told is the answer is maybe an answer, but not the answer by any means. And I would hope that at some point in time that we could actually have some real further guidance from Rural Action or any of the people who are proposing this kind of program, that they could give us some indications as to some other alternatives. Because I think if we're asking the city to pick up the kind of tab that ultimately this could lead to, I think it could be done better in a much more reasonable cost. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mayor, did you want to respond?
I do.
Okay. I sense that.
And basically, it's to say that I don't dispute anything that you're saying. I think that individuals composting is on their own property is fine. I have 2 7-year-old daughters, and we compost as well, and we turn it into kind of a science experiment so they understand. However, I will say as well that there were a number of people in the pilot who were composting at home and just enjoyed the fact that compost, they didn't have to worry about it. They could send it someplace else that would repurpose the compost for the greater good for anyone who wanted to go down to AHRC and buy compost, because some of these people weren't even using it at their own homes, the compost that they were generating. So, and I agree with you. I think that for Rural Action or anybody else who wanted to deploy an educational element for the city of Athens to understand composting, I always look at it from what we're removing from our landfill, quite honestly, as opposed to what you're doing in your own home. Because if you look at the amount of methane that gets generated at a landfill because of organics that are put in, it's astronomical, so I just share with you, again, I think you're spot on. I will challenge the notion of this being rammed down anybody's throat, which is what you said earlier. Again, an opt-in program isn't ramming it down anyone's throat. It's unless opting in is ramming your own throat, but anyway.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Reisner.
I just want to comment. Member McGee came up with a good point about the educational aspects of this. And this seems like it'd be something that the Yeah Kids program could somehow dovetail into this. I don't know how, but I've been to their little markets when they harvest their produce and start selling it to people, and I'm just wondering if somehow there could be a connection with this. Just throwing it out there.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that it lends itself to what Member McGee was saying about some of the either multi-unit housing areas or whatever, and something like that, I think should be explored. That's interesting.
President Isley.
Yes. Did Councilmember Fall? She had raised her hand earlier, and then Councilmember Butler.
I just wanted to reemphasize the carbon reduction. Because we are looking at some really close timelines on some really bad things about climate change. And everything that we can do that reduces climate and the carbon amount is something that we have to seriously look at as a priority in the city. And so, thank you.
And Councilmember Butler, and then we'll go to Mr. Hetty.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge my appreciation to the executive branch for taking the lead on this, and my fellow council members for supporting it initially. One of the things that impressed me from an email from Ms. Andrea Arini, who is the Zero Waste Program Manager at the time when we received some of the support from Rural Action, she acknowledged in an email to us that municipally provided programs see up to 30 to 60% more participation than programs where the residents must opt in. And we do have a good participation rate at the moment. So again, I applaud the leadership of our administration in getting us to this point. So I do support our continued participation and would like to see some version of the pilot program extended. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Hetty, yes.
Thank you, President Isley. As a city engineer, I wouldn't comment on this, but as the Director of Public Works, I would encourage you to think about a closed container system, however we move forward. Cities like Clintonville have had some issues where you have open composting, and I know in my tenure here I've had, we need to strengthen the code to who would enforce any composting as well. We've had some residents call and continue to call our office because there's no one else with a rodent problem. So that, I think, I encourage composting, but I've also, there's been some communities have problems generated where the good deed ended up causing some issues for some of the neighbors or other things.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, sir.
we have a couple council members here. We have an audience member who'd also like to make a comment. So, Councilmember Katsas.
Yes, thank you. Just moving forward, will we see an ordinance on this? Are we just discussing this tonight? Or
We'll bring forward an ordinance.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Councilmember Grace.
I just wanted to comment on the closed container factor. And the containers that are provided, all the buckets come with lids. And then my household, we actually received a little mini wheeled container with a lid that snaps on. And I completely agree with encouraging education and encouraging people to compost independently and use that compost. And I grew up with large gardens in my household and we composted, but I don't do that now as an adult. So I don't have a use for the compost, and even though I have the good intentions, without the curbside pickup that makes it easy for me to divert the organic waste from the landfill, I wasn't independently composting, even though I had the knowledge and certainly the thought, frequently nagging, I should be doing this. I should be doing this. But when it's a program that's provided, the containers provided, myself and my husband and kids, it's much easier and convenient, and we are very happy to be participating. So I know it's made a significant difference in the waste just from my household, and hope that compost is going to good use rather than going into a landfill. So
Thank you.
I'm very happy with the program and hope that it continues.
Good. Thanks. Yes, we have an audience member. And our usual, if you'd like to sign in and also give us your name and if you're representing a group.
Thank you, President Nisley and Council. My name is Beth Clodfelter, and I would just like to make a few comments both as a participant in the pilot program and as a member of the board of the Athens Hocking Recycling Center as well. So I agree with Member Grace. I very much enjoyed participating in this program, and being able to compost as well as to recycle has really reduced the amount of trash that I put in, and now I'm only putting in a trash can in about once in 5 weeks because the amount has just been lowered so much thanks to the composting. I really hope that this program will continue, and I really hope that it can be expanded to the whole community and even to the students at Ohio University, because even though they can do composting in Baker Center and in their cafeterias, I think that a lot of them probably have some food in their dorm rooms and certainly in the fraternities and sororities and stuff. So I just really hope, I mean, I agree with opting in, but I think we should make it available for a lot of Ohio University students. Another thing that's been really good, I think, for the pilot program, since a lot of people have never composted before, is that it's free, which is nice. When I was participating in the program at the farmers market, it cost $5 a month, which was very reasonable. But having it be free, I think, encouraged even more people to participate. But I have been talking to several people who are also participating gave me some comments when we weren't sure if it was going to continue. Everybody wanted it to continue that talked to me, but several people said they would be willing to pay a fee. So I think chances are, I mean, you've probably already thought of this, but perhaps it would be good to do some sort of a survey to see how much people would be willing to pay, but a lot of people are willing to pay for it. So that's really good. And also, as a member of the Recycling Center Board, I know that you said you're hoping that the compost is being put to good use. In the last 3 years, since I think 3 years ago, they started the program in the farmers market. We haven't been able to make the compost fast enough for all of the demand because there are a lot of farmers that buy it, and especially last year, I don't think they'd mind if I say this, the biggest single purchase was made by an Amish farmer in Morgan County who bought 100 cubic yards of compost. That's a ton. That is, I mean, many tons. Oh. That is a lot. I think you can get 1 or 2 cubic yards in the bed of a large pickup truck. So that was a lot, and he did not carry it all there by buggy. We have one. So, and I mean that with all due respect. He does drive a buggy, but he didn't get it there that way. So I just really thank Athens for doing this. I think having curbside composting is another thing that puts us kind of on the list of the most progressive cities in the United States, and definitely in Ohio. And it, as Member Fall said, it's just so important for the environment and the climate to keep all of the methane-producing organic materials out of the landfill. So I just really hope this continues and gets expanded.
Thanks for the comments. Thank you. Mayor Patterson, did I understand if you're continuing beyond the pilot project that you were going to look at expenses for customers if they wanted to continue pick up the fee if they opt in?
We will.
So that's something.
If I'm not mistaken, and I need to fact check this quite honestly, so maybe I won't say anything, but I think in the survey it did ask, would you pay X for this service? Okay. But I'll double check on that and maybe get some metrics for council on that. But we would start looking at it. Actually, we'll start now and start looking forward. Even though if we're continuing on the pilot, we will start looking to see what a cost, if there is one, what it would be. Okay. And likely there will be.
So the ordinance at hand right now is to just extend the current one. But
Correct.
If I hear from the discussion tonight, I think there's interest, perhaps even in the part of the university, students, also the community, Councilmember McGee's options of what do we do about apartments. So some longer range discussions with Rural Action would be very helpful, and other groups too, that we can make this community-wide.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Leslie Fleming, 1 Kent Drive. I just want to really encourage you to extend the pilot program. I'm still actually subscribing to Athens Hocking Recycling residential pickup, and I elected to do that to encourage as many other people as possible to get into the pilot program and experience the benefits of home composting. And so I just really want to encourage you to do that, and to eventually, after the pilot is over, to bring as many of the rest of us into the program as possible. And I would have one comment also, and that is that the residential pickup that Athens Hocking Recycling does for us gives us a clean bucket in exchange for the filled one. And I appreciate that. So that might be something, I don't know if that's feasible in a curbside pickup program, but that's something to think about also.
Great. Thanks for the comments. Okay. All right. I think we're ready to move to the next agenda item. The municipal refuse and recycling contract. And we have received some basic information on that. And do we have some information that will be presented by administration, or just other than the fact that it's coming up for renewal and we'll be stay tuned for details?
I believe Acting Service Safety Director sent to council and to the clerk of council the draft for the RFP for refuge and recycling 2019, and if not, I can certainly get this to council. You've got it.
We have the outline.
You have the outline.
We have the outline.
Correct.
Two-page outline.
That's correct. This is the outline, and one of the notables in the outline is, which will be fleshed out for sure, is the previous RFP had a lot of alternatives in it. Whereas this is really streamlining all of the different factors, if you will, residential refuge removal, residential single stream recycling, residential composting, franchise district refuge removal, franchise district recycling, franchise district on-street refuge and recycling collection, which rolls into your next topic on the agenda, residential special haul service, special events, municipal facilities, refuse and recycling. Before, a lot of these were kind of separate item by item, almost alternatives under a RFP. If you remember, with the last RFP, one of the individuals who bid on it only bid on residential and was very expensive, but and was not wanting to look at any of the other districts or zones or features within our refuse and recycling. So.
And this is due for renewal by what date?
I don't know.
It is July 1. The clerk of council was able to provide the information. July 1. Okay. Thank you. Okay, any comments or questions? This does begin to get it on the docket. We thank you, and we'll look for the fuller document then that we can read the details on. Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
We had a presentation by Andrea Rini and Sarah Conley from Rural Action at the Environment and Sustainability Commission on last week. And one thing that they brought forward, which I believe has been brought forward before, is changing sort of the structure of pay-as-you-throw system. Is that being incorporated into this RFP at all?
I don't believe so. And to that point, one of the things that's interesting is, and I think Ms. Clotfelder brought that up, and that is, and some of you did as well, the amount of trash that you're seeing in terms of landfill trash, the reduction lends itself to a pay-to-throw because that encourages more diversion, whether it's recycling or it's compostable materials. It is not, that I'm aware of, is that part of this RFP. It is something that we have talked long and hard about, though, to whether, at what point does a municipality switch to a pay-to-throw to where you're essentially paying per pound for your landfill trash.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we have a modified sort of pay-as-you-throw system now, right?
We do.
I can have one, or I can have two, and I can have different size containers, and I'm paying for it.
We absolutely do. Yeah, you pay a set rate per bags of trash, and if you have additionals, then your pay rate goes up.
So maybe that's something that could be looked at in the future. I mean, there are two different concepts in a way, but one definitely influences the other. So maybe we can be looking at that again in the future. Maybe at the same time.
Likely at the same time. I will sit down with the acting service safety director and see if that's part of this RFP, or could it be part of this RFP?
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Last but not least, the Big Belly solar recycling and waste bins, and we wanted to review some of the collection and costs. And we, council members, have been provided with, I think, some initial information on this. And so we have information from 2017, 18, and 19, obviously 2017 and 18 being the full years on that, with just a month in on the 2019 information. And so we were looking, so for the 2017 data, for recycling, there's been 44,286 gallons recycled, 77,600 gallons of refuse, for a total of 121,886 gallons. So 36.3% was diverted from the landfill in that year, in 2017. In 2018, the data went up slightly for both recycling. It was down a little. It was down for refuse collection, up for recycling for a total of 125,700 gallons total. So that was went from 36% diversion in 2017 to 39% diversion from the landfill in 2018 with the recycling in the Big Valley. So some encouraging initial information. And so we did want to look at this in comparison to some of the costs, knowing that there was a lease agreement for the Big Belly.
And to remind council and the viewing audience, you know, that was drawing down, I believe it was 54 open bin trash cans that were on Court Street to now 26 trash receptacles that are, as you know, recycling and compactable trash side to the Big Bellies. Another point worth making is, you know, one of the interesting features of the Big Belly is being able to monitor when your bins were full or approaching full and getting out there, and it would reduce the number of trips. I have to tell you, because I really kind of scratched my head over this one when I was talking with the service safety director, acting service safety director, was how many times is AHRC going and emptying these, and the use of these that you're seeing right in front of you, you know, the number of gallons, hundreds of gallons of trash, they're still out there emptying these almost every day, because that's how much use these bins are getting. You know, there's some that get way more use than others. Some of the bins that are on the north end of Court Street, the use is less. The ones that are closer to Court and Union are, again, absolutely need to be emptied every day. And that's with trash compaction. You know, if you remember, the number, or the gallons that would typically go into our former trash bins with the compactable landfill side of the Big Belly units, we're taking what used to be 50 gallons of trash, and it's compacting into that 150 gallons of trash.
Yes, Councilmember McGee.
Well, I feel like I started the ball rolling on this when I raised the issue of whatever happened to the Big Bellies. I just wanted to confirm it's a 5-year contract that was signed, so we're halfway through it at this point in time, so we can't do anything about it even if we disagreed with the premise. I would like to suggest to you that when I look at the statistics you're giving us, I don't think you're giving us an entire picture, because we don't know what it would be like if we used alternatives. The selling point to the big belly that you had brought before council in the past was, one, it would be compacted, but of course we reduced the number of trash cans by half. We didn't explore any other option for having the kinds of trash cans that would provide for recycling only. So we have a big belly system where you have two compartments, whereas we could have two separate trash cans, one so we'd know for the recycling element of it what's really going in that. I've been concerned because I've watched people try to use this big belly thing, and I see a lot of stuff that's not recyclable being put in the recyclable container part of it. I see a lot of trash that's people are just sticking in the door and not even bother closing the door because, you know, it's a hassle as opposed to just dumping something in a trash thing. And I noticed that online there's a lot of some really good closed container trash cans that would cut down on the smell, which I think was one of the basis for the desire to go with the big belly to start with. I noticed there's a lot of much less expensive items online for, you know, the trash units as there are for the recyclable units. So I think the city has basically bought into this with the expectation that we would be dealing with certain problems, and those problems we may have been dealing with them, but without kind of looking into a big belly and seeing what's going on, it's kind of hard to tell as far as the recycling. So when you give us figures like this with pounds of recycling and stuff, I'd like to know, where is this being weighed? Is it including the trash that is not being recycled simply because it's coming from that part of the big belly? How much of that recyclable material is actually not going to be able to be recycled because it's been contaminated with other stuff because people don't put it in the right thing because it's so confusing with that particular big belly product. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned by the fact that, of course, I won't be on council when this comes up for the review for the next contract. And as I indicated in my my concern, I hope council will at least consider some alternatives, because I just went and spent an hour looking at the alternatives online, and for the $30,000 we are paying for the use of the compact big bellies, we could have paid that off in 3 years and had, you know, 56 really good recyclable and waste products. And I'm especially concerned when you tell me that it's being picked up every day, because one of your selling points was really that this would avoid the need for daily pickups, which it was like before, I believe.
So, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I was shocked as well, because it was a selling point.
Right.
But isn't it a good thing that this trash is finding its way into a container as opposed to how much of this trash could land somewhere else? I don't know. I mean, I allowed the behavior of people using these receptacles, which, yes, we're having to empty them every day. I would also contend that there's 26 of them as opposed to 56 of them, which makes them fill up faster because there's fewer of the old open round bins where on a windy day, you know as well as I do, stuff was blowing all over Court Street. But, you know, Member McGee, I think you and I agree on more things than
probably
the general public would believe. But and this is one of those to where I think over the next 2 years of this program, you know, that we will start looking at other alternatives and taking a deeper dive. I would also contend that with recycling, you know, to your point of contaminated recycling, you know, that happens recycling-wide, industry-wide in the recycling world, whether it's our home recycling, whether it's the recycling on Court Street now, or recycling, which is great at a lot of our festivals and events throughout the county, which have largely gone zero waste initiatives at these events, but you're going to have contamination there too. And I get that, and I think you do as well. Mm-hmm. But to your point, just know that we are exploring some other possible alternatives, but I would contend that by and large that this has been successful. Looking at how much we're diverting, which has never happened on Court Street before for pedestrian trash and recycling. So I view it as a successful endeavor. Can we tweak it? I think we absolutely can tweak it in the future. But what I don't want to go back to, Member McGee, is the open top trash cans that were on Court Street to where stuff. And I wouldn't say that smell was at the top of the list, because I would say that the smells that we were picking up were isolated trash bins on Court Street and where their location was, and the types of trash that was being put into those trash receptacles. But to that end, I think that we will certainly be looking at other possible options out there to help drive down costs.
Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you. If the administration could look into the use of the metric, so gallons is an odd metric for this. I think everything else that we do with the Environmental Sustainability Commission is looking at tonnage and pounds. So I'm not sure why we're seeing gallons on this sheet, but if we could get on the same page, it'll help us with our other data that we report on.
And I believe that that's largely based on the fact that I don't think you can go down to your local grocery store or wherever you pick up liners for your trash can and get something that rates how many pounds. It's going to tell you how many gallons. It's based upon the container size in which that trash is being received, and that's what they base it on.
So to Member McGee's point, it's not being weighed. It's being just probably tally marked for pickup by the size of the bag that they're filling. It would be nice to have the weight.
It would be nice to have weight. I agree.
Councilmember Fall.
Well, and following on with this is not only making it so that we compare to other systems, but also the tonnage and how much money we are actually saving in our dumping fees. Because this looks great, but it would be good to put numbers to it, like costs and how much we're saving, that sort of thing.
Sure. And there are some costs that we can't necessarily evaluate when it comes to this might to you or to all of us seem minimal, but if we have trucks that are only stopping at 26 receptacles as opposed to 54, is there a reduction in idle time of diesel fuel emissions? I would say yes. Is that measurable? Maybe.
Right. Well, but from the metrics that we have here, we should be able to cost it out.
Sure.
And it would be good if we could start moving it towards tonnage so that we can probably look at it in comparables across systems. Thank you.
Good. Yes. Councilmember Kotsis.
Thank you. And I remember this goes back a few years when we were talking about this this program at the start, but I remember one of the selling points was the reduction of tipping fees. Are we saying that the tipping fees have not changed, or is that a metric that we could go back and look at and compare between years?
I don't have that data in front of me. That would be data that we'd have to ask HRC to produce, but we can ask them to produce it.
I'd be curious.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
So, yes, Councilmember McGee.
Just one last point. I think it's a very important point that you realize that when you give us figures like this, that the prior trash cans were not divided into any kind of recyclables and trash, and I think that's the best thing that's been done, even though I dislike this particular brand. I think it's far too expensive for what it gives, but I think that when we're dealing with this kind of figures for what's been recycled, it would be great if we could do an experiment with some other kinds of bins too and compare it. But again, I won't be on council, so I hope that kind of thing can be done at some point in time in the future. Thank you.
I appreciate all the discussion. Thank you so much tonight. Thanks for the comments from the audience. Councilmember McGee, and thanks for starting the conversation. And we hope you'll be coming back.
Member McGee, there's still time to change your mind, I believe, right?
Yes, there is.
Yes, if I may chime in on that, Member McGee, I know that I will hear from you in the future. I look forward to it.
We do enjoy the participation here. It's great. Great conversation, great discussion. We will stand adjourned at 8:32 p.m. and we'll see you all next week.